How about now? See if it shows up now. Now imagine an electric chair, if you can imagine what that looks like. It's wooden. It is got some straps on it. It's kind of a disturbing image to think about. Now imagine that we are going to make this image the centerpiece of a new religious movement. That the best person who ever lived was killed in that electric chair. Now imagine making a miniature version of that image, putting it on a necklace, and then wearing that necklace around proudly, showing everybody, look at my favorite person got killed in this chair. Now imagine your father passed away, and we're going to put an image of that chair on top of his grave as a symbol about one of the best things that ever happened to somebody. It sounds morbid, it sounds weird, and that's sort of a picture of what happened with the cross. We proudly display it everywhere. And if some time traveler from the ancient world came and saw the cross proudly displayed everywhere, they would think, what in the world are you guys doing? Christians have transformed one of the most cruel and inhumane instruments of torture and death and made it the central icon of our faith. The cross is the central moment in history. It so changed the world that we measure time before Jesus and after Jesus. It is the central moment in the entire universe. In 1 Corinthians 2, Paul writes to the church, he says, I resolved to know nothing while I was with you, but Christ and him crucified. The cross is why Jesus came to earth. The cross is why we are gathered together today. You cannot make too big a deal about the cross. And in our passage today, Jesus is going to continue to try and show his disciples and teach us about the centrality and importance of the cross. So we're going to read two sections right now. We're going to talk about them a little bit, and then we're going to connect them to the third section. So we're going to start at verse 32. Mark 10, verse 32. The disciples were on their way to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen. We are going to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, they will spit on him, they will flog him, and they will kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He said. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in glory. You do not know what you are asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I will be baptized with? We can, they answered. And Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. And when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be a slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Section that we read first, the title on that section is that Jesus predicts his death a third time. This is at least the third time he's told them about what is coming. Jesus is leading the disciples to Jerusalem. And it says the disciples are astonished. They can't understand why Jesus would want to go to Jerusalem. They might find his picture and theirs on a most wanted poster when they get there. But Jesus keeps saying, we got to go. We got to go to Jerusalem. But he's not going there to keep tempting fate. He tells the disciples he is going there to be arrested. He is going there because he needs to be handed over to the Roman officials. He is going there to be beaten. He is going there to be killed. And 3 days later, he is going to be raised again. The danger that is awaiting him in Jerusalem is not something he is avoiding. It is the reason he is leading them there. It is the thing that Jesus keeps walking towards throughout the gospel. It is inevitable, and the disciples can't understand. Each time, this is the third time that Jesus tells them what is going to happen, and each time they respond very badly. The first time was back a couple chapters in Mark 8. Jesus told them that he was going to be killed, and Peter pulls him aside, tells Jesus to stop talking like that. Jesus tells Peter he is speaking for Satan. He says, "Get behind me, Satan. You do not have the concerns of God, but mere human concerns in mind." The second time in Mark 9, Jesus tells them when they're walking somewhere, and the disciples respond to Jesus telling them he's going to be killed by having an argument about which one of them is the greatest. Maybe they're listening a little bit, and if Jesus is going to be killed, they need to know who is the greatest so they can take over, making a succession plan. But if they're hearing what he's saying, they're definitely not listening, and they definitely don't understand. So this is the third time that he's told them, and this time, it's not all of them, but Jesus is walking ahead because he's ready to go to Jerusalem, and nobody else wants to go, so maybe the disciples are dragging their feet, making it take a little longer. They're falling behind, but James and John, they hurry up. They catch up to Jesus while they're alone. They have to be alone because they couldn't ask this with everybody else around. And they say, "Jesus, we have a question for you. But before we ask, we need you to say yes. Whatever we ask, we want you to say yes," which is a pretty good indication that this is going to go badly. This is probably not how you start a conversation with Jesus. And surprisingly, Jesus doesn't say, "Do you want to start over again? Maybe you could say please." He doesn't redirect them. He just says, "Well, let's see where this is going. What would you like me to do for you?" And they say, "Well, Jesus, when you get elected and when you are in your glory, we would like you to make one of us the vice president and one of us the secretary of state." No big deal. And their response to Jesus telling them that he is about to die is to ask for the top positions in his government. They don't understand at all what Jesus has been telling them. The cross is so upside down and backwards. It's so contrary to everything that we think should happen that they still can't understand what Jesus is doing. Disciples have spent every day with Jesus. They live with him, they walk with him, they eat with him. They ask him questions. He tells them plainly what's going to happen, and they still can't understand. And my first response often when I read stories like this is to think, can you believe these guys? These guys are idiots. They're with Jesus and they can't understand. And in some ways, that's probably true. But I hope that's not our only response. It's easy to read the Bible and read stories like this and think, can you believe these guys? They have seen God working in their lives, and yet they still doubt, yet they still can't trust him. Can you believe that the Israelites, they walked out of Egypt through the Red Sea, and like 3 days later, they're complaining about not having food and water? They're doubting that God can give them what they need. Can you believe that someone like David, a king who had everything, would commit adultery and murder to be with Bathsheba. Somehow we think if we had seen God work the way that God worked in the lives of these Bible characters, we would be different and we would be better. But I think if we were more honest, reading these stories wouldn't lead us to be more confident and smug about ourselves, but lead us to more humility. If these people in the Bible who really experience God in this way still have doubts, still get impatient, still have temptations, it should make us ask, where am I being the same kind of idiot that these guys are? Where am I susceptible to the same thing? If other people were to read my story the way that we're reading their story, what things do you think somebody else would say? What is wrong with that guy? Why couldn't he continue to trust in God? If these guys can't figure it out, how can we? And so it makes me wonder, what are the things that I want God to do for me that from his perspective would look just as silly, just as trivial, just as wrong-headed? What things am I wanting and expecting Jesus to do in my life that look a lot like asking him to give me whatever I want? It's pretty arrogant, and yet we do it all the time. But Jesus' death on the cross is such a curveball to our expectations. It should give us a lot of humility, make us question ourselves and our plans and our ideas. We think we know what is best, and yet God might be doing something completely different, something so completely better that we couldn't imagine it. Jesus tells the disciples the whole reason he came is to die. That sacrificial love will be the way that the world is changed. First thing that should do is make us humble as we think about ourselves and our plans. And if the cross is central to what God is doing in the world and the way that God saves the world, another thing it should do is give us humility and skepticism as we think about our politics as well. James and John think Jesus is coming to do something political. They think he is going to be the king. They think he is going to have a kingdom with borders and walls, constitution and army, a country in all the ways that we think of a country. And if Jesus is going to do that, then they think maybe they would be good candidates for the top positions in the cabinet. But if the cross is the goal of Jesus' life, then he has not come to set up that kind of kingdom. He's not going to be the king of the country in that way. If he wanted to do that, he could have done that. The Old Testament looks a lot like that, God setting up that kind of kingdom. And it failed, and it didn't work. And so Jesus isn't going to be that kind of savior, and he isn't going to be that kind of king. He's not setting up a kingdom in the way we expect. Jesus is going to do something different. He says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to serve or to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus has come for every people, every tribe, every kingdom, every language. He came to save, to make grace and forgiveness and freedom available, not just to one particular kingdom, but to the whole world. For all of the kings, all of the servants, all of the slaves, everybody, Jesus has come to save. He's also come to save every animal and every plant and every river and lake and forest. Everything that has been subject to the effects of sin, Jesus is going to save on the cross. He is going to do it by dying. And the irony of what James and John are asking of Jesus to be on his right and left when he comes into glory is that the place we see his glory is on the cross. And there is someone on his right and left. But I don't think James and John are asking to be crucified with Jesus. They want power and influence. And if the cross is the central way we understand the world, then it should give our political aspirations some humility as well. Jesus says to the disciples, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles, they like power, they like authority, they like being able to tell other people what to do. Other people are going to try and consolidate power and rule by force and coercion, but not so with you. My kingdom will not be a kingdom of war and bombs. It will be a kingdom of peace and sacrificial love." Jesus is teaching them that they are going to gain influence by loving and serving and caring for the city and the country where they are called to live. It's going to be our love and our sacrifice and our desire to serve that makes people want us to lead, want us to be in charge. That's how power works for Christians. The cross becomes that symbol of sacrificial love that guides everything we do. The cross becomes the model of how we love each other and how we love our world and how God is going to change it. My new favorite book is C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength. It's the third book in his space trilogies. Anybody read C.S. Lewis' space trilogy? One person? All right, we need some more people to read it. It's really good. So in That Hideous Strength, it's the third book, and the bad guys in the book are an organization called the NICE, the National Institute for Coordinated Experiments. They are not as nice as their name sounds. The NICE is run by men who are seeking to control the world. They have money. They are working to expand their influence. And they believe that since men are going to be ruled by other men, they might as well be the ones who rule. They might as well be the ones who shape society and determine its future. And so they use their resources to use the media to manipulate people's understanding of what's going on. They create a riot, and they have pre-written the newspaper reports about the riot to blame the people they don't like so that they can send in their own police force to provide order. And so they're taking more and more power and manipulating more and more people, and they're doing a pretty good job of it for a while. And for a while, it looks like they are going to succeed. Now, opposite the NICE, there is a community of people at St. Anne's. It's a secluded manor house. It's a little community of Christians. There is Ransom, who is the main character in the series. There's a few married couples. There's one man who is there who isn't quite a believer, but he believes and trusts Ransom, and so he's there and he's participating. And they are quietly living in seclusion, living the Christian life together. And as NICE gets more and more power, some of them are getting impatient. They're getting more and more restless. We need to do something. We need to take action. And Ransom keeps saying, wait, it's not the time. It's not the time. Keep doing what we're doing. And eventually, something like what happens at the Tower of Babel happens at one of their NICE meetings. Chaos ensues. The whole thing falls apart. Their animals that they're using for their experiments get loose, and it's chaos and it's wild, and the whole thing falls apart. And the world is saved. And what's fascinating about the way that the book ends is that the good guys don't see that this whole NICE version of reality has fallen apart. They don't say, okay, now we can be in charge, and we can be the good guys, and we can do the right things, and we can set up the government in the right way. That's not how it works. They simply return to their homes. Their marriages that had been broken are restored. They go back to their normal lives. They have families. It's not power and violence and fear that will change the world. It's cross-shaped, sacrificial love. This is what it looks like to be a Christian. It should give us a lot of skepticism of those who just want more power. It should make us skeptical that all of those kinds of politics are not going to actually solve any of our problems. The glory of Jesus happens on the cross. It doesn't look like power and positions like James and John think it does. It looks like sacrificial love And it's the only way the world can be changed. Now let's read this last section. Because James and John don't get what they asked for, but in this next section of chapter 10, somebody does get what they asked for. So back at verse 46 in Mark 10. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting on the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." And throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus. "Your faith has healed you." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus on the road. So they're walking. After they get in this argument, after James and John ask Jesus to make them give him positions on his left and right, the disciples get mad. They keep on walking. They get to Jericho. And this blind man hears that Jesus is coming and says, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And the people say, "Knock it off. You're being annoying. Let us talk to Jesus." But he keeps yelling louder, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Until finally Jesus says, "I want to talk to that guy." And Bartimaeus is excited. Says he tosses his cloak aside and runs to Jesus. Now remember, he's begging, and so probably his cloak he had laid out in front of him. That's where any gifts that he would have received would have been on his cloak. And he's so excited that Jesus comes, he tosses it to the side, runs to Jesus. Says, forget all of that. He tosses aside everything he has, says, "I'm going to go see Jesus." And when he gets to Jesus, Jesus asks him the same question he asked James and John. "What do you want me to do for you?" And Bartimaeus says, "I want to see." And he receives his sight. James and John's request was denied. Bartimaeus gets his sight. And Bartimaeus is a complete contrast to the disciples we just saw. Bartimaeus is poor, vulnerable. He's an outcast. His blindness means he's reduced to begging. His name, son of Timaeus, means son of honor, but it's clear by his position, it's clear by the way the people are trying to shut him up that he's just a nuisance. He's in the way. He has no honor at the present. But unlike James and John, Bartimaeus isn't looking for power and prestige and wealth and honor. He just wants to see. He wants to be healed. And this is what Jesus came to do. He told the disciples he came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now that word ransom is important. Ransom we pretty much only use when we talk about kidnapping today, and pretty much only in movies. It happens in real life, but not that often. But in Jesus' day, ransom wasn't primarily a word that was related to kidnapping. It was a word that was related to slavery. It was the word that was used to purchase the freedom of a slave. You paid the ransom to set them free. And it would have been a significant amount of money, enough to replace the slave for the slave owner. That's the word that's being used here. Now, thankfully, we don't have slavery in our country anymore, so it's a little hard to imagine. But imagine, maybe we think about being an employee. Maybe think about your salary. And then think about your salary times all of the years you're supposed to work for someone. Now imagine someone coming and writing your employer a check to replace all of those hours so that you can go free. It's a big check. It's a big deal. It's what Jesus says he came to do. He came to pay our ransom, and not just for one of us, but for all of us. He came to do it at a scale we can't imagine, to set us free from slavery to sin. And the only way that can be done is if he makes the ultimate sacrifice on the cross. We needed someone to pay that price, to offset the damage we caused and set us free. That's what the cross is all about. Only when we see how much he has given for us can it transform our lives. Can it give us the humility to follow Jesus wherever he leads, not angling for better positions, a little more money, a little bit more power, striving to get ahead like James and John. Bartimaeus is the opposite. He just wants to be set free. And when he is, he drops everything and follows Jesus. If we see what he's done for us on the cross, we can let him lead us. We can live in the freedom of following him. The cross means all of us can do that. Will you pray with me? Dear God, help us to understand in a way that's really hard to understand the power and the mystery that you offer on the cross. You gave us everything so that we can trust you, so that we can follow you, so that we can know we don't need to get it for ourselves. Help us to know that if you've done that for us, how much more will you give us everything else we need? In your name we pray.